What would you do if your husband slept with your sister? The night was quiet, too quiet. My husband, Jason, had just gone to bed after saying he had a headache. I stayed behind in the kitchen, finishing the dishes, letting the hum of the dishwasher fill the silence. It was supposed to be a normal Tuesday evening, but there it was, his phone. Unlocked. Carelessly left on the counter as if he had nothing to hide. But that night, my instincts were louder than my better judgment. I didn't plan to snoop. I really didn't. But something had felt off for weeks, months even. I picked up his phone hesitantly, my fingers trembling slightly as I tapped into his messaging app. That's when I saw her name, Emily. My sister. The first few messages were harmless, a joke, a meme, a lol, here and there. But as I scrolled further, the language changed. The tone shifted. There were messages about late night, accidental visits reminiscing about touches, stolen kisses, and even hotel room numbers. My heart slammed into my ribs so hard I thought it would burst. I kept scrolling, unable to stop, each word stabbing deeper into my chest. The last message was just an hour ago. Wish it was your bed I was crawling into tonight. I froze. My breath hitched in my throat. The room spun for a moment as the weight of the betrayal dropped onto my shoulders like a boulder. I dropped the phone. It clattered on the tiles, louder than thunder in that awful silence. I didn't cry right away. Instead, I stood there shaking, trying to breathe, trying to make sense of what I'd just read. My husband. My sister. Not a stranger, not a fling, my blood and my partner. It was nearly 2 a.m. when I finally crept into our bedroom. He was asleep, breathing softly, the man I'd shared 7 years of my life with, the man I'd married in front of my entire family, including her. I stared at him for a long time, wondering who he really was, who they really were, and who I had become in the process of loving people so willing to lie to me. I left the room, locked myself in the bathroom, and cried silently until the sun came up. The next morning, I made breakfast as usual, eggs, toast, coffee. He kissed me on the cheek like nothing had happened. Like my world hadn't just ended the night before. I played along, I even smiled. But something inside me had changed, permanently. That day, I knew I had to find out everything. Once I saw those messages, every memory in the past 6 months shifted in meaning. Moments that once seemed normal or mildly strange now pulsed with hidden tension. I replayed conversations, glances, excuses, everything, like the time Emily started showing up uninvited. At first, I thought it was sweet. She'd bring over wine and say she was lonely. Jason always welcomed her with a grin that, in retrospect, lingered too long. I remember one afternoon when I came home early from work and they were laughing in the living room. She was sitting on the arm of the couch, my spot. Their laughter had stopped the moment I walked in. And there was the day of my birthday dinner. Emily had bought me a designer bag I had admired months before but never mentioned again. Jason had never remembered such details. He didn't even get me a card. Emily whispered, he helped me pick it out. With a wink, I thought they had conspired out of love for me. Now I see it differently, how smug her expression was, how uncomfortable he looked. There was also the sudden shift in our intimacy. Jason and I weren't as close anymore. He'd flinch when I touched him, make excuses to stay up late working. He became protective of his phone, even taking it into the shower, something he had never done before. Back then, I blamed myself. Maybe I wasn't being a good enough wife. Maybe he was stressed. Maybe Emily was just trying to be supportive. I gaslighted myself because I didn't want to believe that my husband and my sister could do something so cruel. But after reading those messages, it all snapped into place like a cruel puzzle finally revealing its image. I began watching them closely. I didn't confront either of them right away. Instead, I noted every interaction, her sudden laughter when Jason walked into a room, the way his eyes lingered a moment too long, even how quickly she replied to his texts when we were all together. She never did that for me. I even found an old group photo from our family BBQ last summer. I zoomed in. There they were, just behind me, sharing a secret smile while I grilled burgers. That picture used to make me smile. Now it made my skin crawl. The hardest part was pretending to be okay. Pretending I didn't notice how they became quieter when I entered the room. Pretending I believed Emily when she said she was just stopping by, after work, always a little too dressed up for a casual visit. I became obsessed. I created a folder in my phone where I kept screenshots of their interactions, times, dates, photos. I wrote down anything suspicious in a notebook I hid in the back of my closet. I needed proof, not just to confront them, but to prove to myself that I wasn't imagining it. Every day became a performance. Smiling, hosting, listening to my sister talk about her dating was, while I tried not to scream, kissing Jason goodnight while my stomach churned. The truth was unbearable. But the ambiguity was worse. So I gathered my evidence, I waited for the right moment, and I planned the confrontation that would tear everything apart. Because now, I knew it wasn't just a mistake. It was a deliberate, ongoing betrayal, and I was done pretending I didn't see it. It happened 3 days after I first discovered their messages. I had been monitoring Jason's phone with subtle glances when he left the room, taking mental snapshots. But that night, something told me to look again. He had fallen asleep on the couch, phone loose in his hand. This time there was a new message from Emily. It didn't just confirm the affair, it obliterated any doubt I had about how deep it ran. She wrote, "I can't stand lying to her anymore. I almost told her yesterday, I wish we could just start over, just you and me." That was followed by his reply, just need more time. I'll figure it out. She's not ready, not your wife, just she, as if I were some obstacle. A background character in their stolen love story. Then the final blow, a photo, taken in a hotel room I didn't recognize. The timestamp was from a week ago, the same night Jason claimed he was stuck in traffic and too tired to make dinner with my parents. In the picture, Emily was in one of Jason's old T-shirts, the one he always wore around the house. Her hair was tousled, she was smiling. I stared at the screen until my vision blurred. My body was frozen, but inside something was cracking, loud and unstoppable. It felt like the sound of glass shattering in my chest. I made it to the bathroom and vomited. After I cleaned myself up, I went back into the living room and watched Jason sleeping. He looked peaceful. I wanted to shake him awake and scream. I wanted to cry, demand answers. But I didn't, not yet. Instead, I went to the guest room, locked the door, and stared at the ceiling for hours. That night, I didn't sleep. I just played their words over and over in my mind. She's not ready. What did that mean? Not ready to be left. Not ready to know. Not ready to lose everything? I imagined how long this had been going on. How many times they had shared beds, lies, secrets. How many family dinners they had sat across from me, exchanging glances while I passed them the potatoes. It wasn't just the physical affair that hurt, it was the intimacy, the emotional betrayal. They confided in each other, dreamed of a future. One where I didn't exist. I checked my own message history with Emily. A month ago, I had texted her late at night. "I feel like Jason's pulling away. You think I'm being paranoid?" Her reply had been, "You're just overthinking. He's lucky to have you." It felt like poison now. She had looked me in the eye, hugged me, lied with practiced ease. And Jason, he had made love to me while knowing her secrets. He had smiled at me every morning with lips that whispered to her at night. I spent the rest of that night reading every message again, committing it all to memory. I wanted to feel the full depth of the betrayal. I wanted it to sear into me, so I'd never forget what they had done. When the sun rose, I was still awake, sitting in a chair, arms wrapped around myself. I didn't cry again that morning. There was no energy left for tears. Only a growing, focused fire. This was no longer just about heartbreak. It was about dignity, and I was done letting them take mine away. I waited 2 days before I confronted Emily. 2 long days of silence, of masking my rage behind forced smiles and robotic conversations. I needed the right moment. A place where I could look her in the eye and give her one chance, one single chance, to tell the truth. So I invited her to lunch. We met at a quiet cafe downtown, the kind she always said made her feel like she was in a movie. She showed up wearing one of her signature oversized scarves, sunglasses still perched on her head like she'd stepped off a magazine page. She hugged me like nothing was wrong, like everything was fine. I sat across from her, barely holding myself together. "How are things with Jason?" she asked casually, sipping her lavender tea. That's when I knew, without question, that she had no intention of coming clean. Her performance was flawless, smooth, practiced. I leaned in. "Emily, I saw the messages." The color drained from her face instantly. She blinked once, twice, then forced a laugh. "What messages?" I didn't smile. I didn't blink. I just stared at her. "Don't do that," I said quietly. "Don't insult me." She looked down at her cup, then back at me, her jaw tightening. "You're misunderstanding. It's not what you think. There was a photo of you in his shirt in a hotel." The text said everything. She swallowed hard, suddenly pale. Her fingers trembled as she reached for her cup, missed, and then folded her hands in her lap. For the first time in her life, my sister was speechless. Then, finally, a whisper. "It wasn't supposed to go that far." My chest clenched. "So it did happen." She sighed, her voice cracking. "It started after Dad's heart attack. Jason came by to check on me. It just happened once, but we kept talking. I was lonely. He said you two were distant." I shook my head. "So you turned to my husband." She looked up at me, eyes glossy. "You don't understand. I didn't plan it. I didn't mean to hurt you." "But you did," I said, voice cold. "You had so many chances to stop, to tell me. Instead, you lied. You watched me cry and lied." Her lip quivered. "I thought he was gonna leave you. He said you weren't happy." I stared at her, numb. "I was happy. I thought he was too." "I didn't know what to do," she said. "I thought maybe if he chose me, it would all make sense." There it was, the selfish root of it all. She wanted him to choose her, my sister who always had to win, who had taken my clothes, my friends, my spotlight. Now she had taken my husband too. "You were supposed to protect me," I said softly. You're my sister. She wiped her eyes, but it looked rehearsed. I never wanted this to happen, but you let it. We sat in silence after that. Our food arrived, but neither of us touched it. I stared at her, wondering how someone I'd known my whole life could be capable of something so cruel. And she avoided my gaze, her shoulders slumped, defeated. I think you should go, I said. She opened her mouth to speak but stopped. She nodded, gathered her purse, and walked out without a word. I didn't follow her. I just sat there staring at her untouched tea, going cold. The silence that followed her departure was loud and hollow. My sister was gone, not just physically, but from the place she once held in my heart. And I knew then, there was no going back. Jason came home that evening humming a song under his breath, a grocery bag dangling from one hand. He kissed me on the forehead like always, as if our lives weren't about to unravel. I didn't confront him right away. I waited until after dinner. We sat at the table in silence, the clinking of forks on plates the only sound between us. He seemed distracted, checking his phone more than usual, probably waiting for a message from her. When I finally spoke, it was without anger. I had lunch with Emily today. He looked up sharply. Oh, that's nice. I told her I knew everything. He froze, his fork stopped mid-air. A shadow passed over his face, and for a long second he didn't say a word. Then, with a heavy exhale, he put the fork down and ran a hand through his hair. So, he murmured, you know. There was no denial, no performance. Just a small, broken sentence that felt like both a confession and a surrender. How long? I asked. He didn't look at me. About 8 months, 8 months. Nearly a year of lies, of betrayal, of pretending. Why? I whispered. He finally met my eyes. I don't know. You don't know? He rubbed his face. It just happened. She was there. You were busy with work. Things between us were off. I laughed, cold hollow. So you slept with my sister? I didn't mean for it to get serious, he said quickly. It was supposed to be a one-time thing. But then we started talking. It felt easy. Easy. I repeated, stunned. Destroying our marriage felt easy? No, that's not what I meant. He looked desperate now, leaning forward. I was confused. I thought maybe I didn't love you the same way anymore. So instead of telling me you kept sleeping with her, he swallowed hard. I didn't know how to tell you. I didn't want to hurt you. You didn't want to hurt me. I spat. You cheated on me. With my sister. Repeatedly. Behind my back. For months. Don't talk to me about not wanting to hurt me. He looked ashamed, shrinking in his seat. I know. I messed up. I should have stopped it. I didn't know how to make it stop without everything falling apart. You should have thought about that before you crossed the line. Tears welled in his eyes, but I didn't feel sorry for him, not anymore. I never stopped loving you, he said quietly. Then why didn't you choose me? I asked. He had no answer, just silence. In that moment, I realized he wasn't the man I married anymore. Or maybe he never was. Maybe I had loved a version of him that never really existed. I want a divorce, I said. His head jerked up. What? Wait. No, please, let's talk about this. There's nothing to talk about, I said, rising from the table. You made your choice. Now I'm making mine. He stood too, panicking. We can fix this. I'll go to therapy. I'll block her. I swear. It's too late. Jason, he followed me down the hall, begging, apologizing, making promises I knew he wouldn't keep. I was lost, he said, his voice cracking. I didn't mean for it to go this far. I was weak. I was scared. I thought she made me feel something I'd lost, but it wasn't real. Not like this. I turned around. You don't get to say that now. You had 8 months to figure out what was real. And you chose lies, you chose her. He fell silent again, defeated, wounded, but not innocent. I walked into our bedroom and closed the door. He didn't follow me this time. That night he slept on the couch. I didn't sleep at all. His excuses were pathetic. His remorse too late. I had heard everything I needed. A week later, I made the painful decision to tell my parents. I hadn't wanted to involve them, but I couldn't carry the weight alone anymore. They loved Jason like a son. They adored Emily. She was the charming one, always full of laughter and confidence. I knew it would destroy them, but they had to know the truth. I needed them to see what had happened. And selfishly, I needed someone on my side. We met at their house one Sunday afternoon, the same living room where we had opened Christmas gifts, celebrated birthdays, and grieved together when Grandma passed. The air was thick with anticipation even before I said a word. Jason came too, I insisted. I wanted him to be there when the truth shattered our family illusion. I wanted him to see the fallout. My parents sat across from us, cups of tea untouched on the table. Emily wasn't there. I hadn't invited her. Not yet. I started quietly. I explained how things hadn't felt right for a while. How I had found messages. How the affair wasn't with a stranger. When I said Emily's name, my mother's mouth fell open. My father sat perfectly still, as if frozen in disbelief. Jason stared at the floor. She's your sister? My mother finally whispered. I know. I said. And he was my husband. My father leaned forward, hands clasped tightly. There has to be some mistake. There's no mistake, Jason said quietly. Without lifting his head, my mother covered her mouth with both hands. I don't understand. She betrayed me? I said. They both did. My father stood and paced the room, breathing heavily. This isn't real. Emily wouldn't do that, not to you. She did, I said. And she lied to me, over and over, while Jason kept pretending everything was fine. Then came something I didn't expect. My mother, slowly lowering her hands, said, "We should talk to Emily before jumping to conclusions." I stared at her. "Mom, I saw the messages. There's no room for confusion. She's still your sister," she said softly. "You two need each other." My voice trembled. "She slept with my husband. How can you even? She's always been impulsive," my mother offered. "But she's not evil." "And what about me?" I asked. "What about what I'm going through?" "You're not blameless either," my father snapped, surprising me. "Jason said you two hadn't been close in a while. Maybe he felt neglected." I looked at Jason, who still wouldn't meet my eyes. So that was his defense. I felt the blood drain from my face. "Are you really blaming me?" I asked. "No," my mother said quickly, "but sometimes things get complicated. People make mistakes." "Mistakes," I repeated. "Sleeping with your wife's sister isn't a mistake. It's a choice. A repeated, calculated choice." Jason finally looked up, eyes red. "I didn't want it to happen like this." My mother reached out and touched his arm. "You were part of this family too?" I couldn't breathe. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I had come seeking comfort, justice, some semblance of support. Instead, I felt abandoned all over again. "I see now," I said slowly, rising from the couch. "This family will bend over backward to protect the golden child you always have?" "That's not fair," my mother whispered. "No," I said. "What's not fair is being betrayed and then told to forgive just because she's family. What's not fair is watching the people who are supposed to love you look for excuses for the ones who hurt you." My father looked down. My mother said nothing. "I'm done," I said, voice hollow. "With both of them, and maybe with all of you." I walked out of that house alone, again. My family meeting didn't bring healing. It brought clarity. They weren't going to choose me, so I chose myself. In the weeks that followed, everything I'd known unraveled. My marriage, my relationship with my sister, my place in my family, gone, all of it crumbled in slow motion. The house felt colder without the illusion of safety. I wandered from room to room, trying to pretend like the walls didn't remember what happened inside them. Every photo frame, every drawer, every smell reminded me of something that no longer belonged to me. Jason had moved into a hotel temporarily. He offered to stay at a friend's place, but I didn't care where he went, just as long as he was gone. We agreed to keep the divorce civil, but our short text exchanges were dry, robotic. My heart didn't ache for him anymore. It ached for what he took from me. For what he turned me into, someone who couldn't trust her own instincts. What hurt more than Jason, though, was the silence from my parents. After the confrontation, they didn't call. They didn't ask how I was. There was no knock at the door, no apology, no follow-up conversation. Days turned into weeks. Then a month passed. Nothing. Emily posted pictures on social media like nothing had happened. Brunch with friends, a new haircut, sunset selfies. It was like she had shed me from her life completely, effortlessly. I blocked her, but not before I saw one comment under a photo that read, "Life looks good on you?" And she had replied, "It finally is." That sentence sat in my chest like lead. I didn't talk to anyone about what happened. I was too ashamed. I told my closest friend, Hannah, bits and pieces, just enough for her to understand, but I couldn't get the whole story out. Not yet. I couldn't say out loud that my husband had slept with my sister and my family chose to look away. Nights were the worst. I couldn't sleep, but I couldn't stay awake either. I would drift off, then jolt upright at 3 a.m. with anxiety clawing at my chest. I didn't cry anymore. I just stared at the ceiling, hollowed out. I couldn't eat. I couldn't focus at work. I was barely functioning, a shell on autopilot. I didn't recognize myself. I was quieter, softer in the worst way. I avoided mirrors. My body felt foreign, touched by someone who had given the same touches to my sister. That realization made my skin crawl. The thoughts became dangerous. The kind that start with, maybe if I had, and end with, none of this would have happened. Maybe if I had worked less. Maybe if I had noticed the signs earlier. Maybe if I'd been better, prettier, more interesting. I spiraled. One morning, I woke up and couldn't get out of bed. Not because I was tired, but because I couldn't find a reason. The ceiling seemed like the only place that made sense anymore. I lay there until sunset, numb. That was the moment I realized I needed help. Not because I wanted to heal yet, but because I didn't want to disappear. I booked a therapy session. I didn't even know what I was going to say. But I showed up. "I'm here because I lost everything," I told the therapist. "And the worst part is, no one came looking for me." That session was the first time someone validated my pain without making excuses for the people who caused it. I left that office feeling like maybe, just maybe, I could survive this. Not yet thrive, not yet forgive, but survive. Because even if I was alone now, at least I could finally hear my own voice again. And that voice was whispering, "You deserve better." The decision had been made weeks earlier, but filing the actual paperwork brought a different kind of pain. It felt official, irreversible. The last thread between Jason and me was about to be cut, and I wasn't sure if I was more relieved or devastated. I sat in the lawyer's office on a rainy Thursday afternoon. The windows were fogged, the coffee stale, and everything about the room felt sterile. My attorney, a calm woman named Denise with kind eyes and an efficient tone, walked me through the process with practiced precision. "Uncontested divorce," she said, flipping through papers. "You have no children, no disputes over property or finances. It will be straightforward legally speaking, straightforward, legally, but not emotionally." Jason and I had shared a mortgage, a car, a dog who died 2 years ago. We'd picked out paint colors together, argued over holiday decorations, built 1,000 little routines that once felt like the foundation of a life. Now, it all came down to a signature. He didn't contest it. He didn't even try to stall it. He just agreed, almost too quickly, like he had been waiting for me to let go, so he could finally be free from the guilt of pretending he still wanted this marriage. I remember signing the papers. My hand didn't shake. My pen didn't hesitate. But when I lifted my head, something inside me buckled. This was it. No more. No more. Just 2 signatures on a piece of paper and a legal end to a love that had once felt unbreakable. I went home afterward and sat in my car in the driveway for nearly an hour. I couldn't bring myself to go inside. That house had become a mausoleum of memories. Every creak of the floorboard was a ghost. Every photo on the wall was a lie. Eventually I walked in. The silence hit me like a wave. There were still pieces of him in the space, an old sweatshirt in the laundry basket, a razor in the bathroom, a pair of shoes by the door. I put them all in a box. Not gently, not with nostalgia, but with a mechanical focus. Each item felt like a betrayal I could hold in my hands. I left the box by the door. Texted him once, "Come get your things." He replied a few hours later, "Okay, I'll come when you're not home." Of course, even now he didn't want to face me. When he finally came, I wasn't there, but I watched through the doorbell camera. He looked thinner, tired. He paused at the threshold for a long time before stepping in. He didn't take everything, just the essentials. He glanced around, eyes lingering on the bookshelf, the kitchen, the hallway we used to dance in. Then that was it. No dramatic goodbye, no final plea, just a quiet retreat. Later that evening, Denise called to confirm the papers were filed. "You're officially in the waiting period," she said. "In 60 days it'll be finalized." 60 days. 2 months until I was no longer a wife. That night, I sat on the edge of my bed and whispered the words out loud. "I'm getting divorced." They sounded strange, heavy, but also liberating. The worst was behind me. The pain would linger, yes. The trust would take years to rebuild. But I had done the hardest thing. I had chosen myself. The divorce wasn't a failure, it was freedom. And I was finally starting to feel what that meant. 2 weeks after filing the divorce papers, I began packing the life I had spent years building. The decision to leave the house had come slowly, but decisively. I couldn't stay in a place filled with so many echoes of betrayal. Each corner whispered lies I didn't want to hear anymore. That house had become a museum of false memories. And I didn't want to be its curator. It was raining again, the kind of cold, gray drizzle that matched my mood perfectly. I wore old jeans, a sweater too big for me, and no makeup. I wasn't trying to pretend today was normal. It wasn't. I had rented a small apartment across town. Just 1 bedroom, a modest kitchen, and creaky wooden floors. It wasn't much, but it was mine. Clean, new. Untouched by Jason, untouched by her. The moving truck arrived early. I directed the movers like a ghost, quiet, distant, trying not to get caught in the gravity of each item being lifted away. The couch where Jason had fallen asleep after Sunday dinners. The coffee table we assembled together one Christmas Eve, cursing the instructions in frustration and laughter. The books we had read aloud to each other during the pandemic. Each object carried a story. And each story felt like a lie now. I didn't take everything. I left the master bed. I didn't want it. I didn't want the sheets, the pillows, the mattress that had once been a place of love but now felt poisoned. I took the guest bed instead, the one that smelled like linen and had no history of infidelity. Packing my clothes was surreal. I found an old sweater Jason once said he loved on me. I hesitated for a second, then stuffed it in a donation bag. I wasn't keeping pieces of someone who didn't fight for me. There was a box in the back of our closet filled with letters and cards, anniversary notes, birthday messages, old Polaroids. I opened one card from our 3rd year together, his handwriting looped delicately across the page. "I'll never stop choosing you." I ripped it in half, then again, until it was a pile of meaningless paper in my lap. By late afternoon, the truck was loaded, and I stood alone in the now empty house. The silence was different now. Not heavy, but still. Like the house itself was finally exhaling. I walked through the rooms one last time. I touched the kitchen counter where I'd found his phone. The hallway where I'd screamed after learning the truth. The bathroom where I cried all night, knees tucked against my chest. Then I closed the front door behind me. The new apartment was quiet and clean. I unpacked slowly. I put up just one photo, me and my dog, years ago. Before any of this happened, I lit a candle. I opened a window. I sat on the floor and looked around. It wasn't home yet, but it was a beginning. That night, I cooked dinner for one. I watched a movie I liked. I curled up in my new bed and didn't cry. It was the first night in months I didn't dream about them. Just quiet, uninterrupted sleep. Moving out didn't erase the past, but it gave me a chance to build something new, free from ghosts. And for the first time in a long time, I believed that maybe I would be okay. I had drafted and deleted the message to Emily at least a dozen times. For weeks, I told myself I didn't need to say anything more. That silence was enough. But the truth was, there were words stuck in my throat, sharp ones, bitter ones, and some too heavy to carry any longer. It came on a quiet Sunday morning. I was sitting by the window of my new apartment, sipping lukewarm coffee when the urge hit, not out of anger, not even revenge, but closure. I opened my phone, pulled up her contact, and began typing, Emily. I hope someday you understand the gravity of what you've done, not just to me, but to yourself. You didn't just destroy my marriage. You destroyed a sisterhood, a bond that was supposed to outlive everything. I don't hate you, but I will never trust you again, and because of that, I can't have you in my life. This is the last time you'll hear from me. I rated again. It wasn't poetic or dramatic, it was flat, final, honest. I hit send, then I blocked her number, blocked her on social media, deleted every photo, every thread, every saved memory attached to her name. It wasn't rage that drove me, it was survival. The memories of us as children, playing dress up, whispering secrets under the covers, sharing birthday cakes, flashed briefly in my mind. But they felt like scenes from someone else's life. Someone who still believed blood was stronger than betrayal. There was no response, of course. Not that I expected one. I found out later, through a mutual acquaintance, that Emily had told people we grew apart. That a falling out over something personal. I laughed when I heard that. Even now, she couldn't own her choices, still spinning the truth like she always had. But it didn't matter anymore. I wasn't going to correct the narrative. Let her have her version, I had mine. And mine was grounded in truth, however painful. In the weeks that followed, there were moments of grief I hadn't anticipated. I'd see something on sale she would have loved. Hear a song we once danced to at a cousin's wedding. Reflexively, I'd think I should tell Emily before remembering. And every time that remembering hurt a little less. Cutting off your sister isn't something anyone prepares you for. There's no handbook for grieving someone who's still alive, who walks around in the same world, breathing the same air, while you carry the wreckage they left behind. But I had no choice. I didn't do it to punish her. I did it to save myself. Family, I realized, isn't just about blood. It's about trust. About loyalty, about showing up for each other in ways that matter, and Emily had failed me in every possible way. I wasn't angry anymore, just done. That was the difference. That was peace. One late night, about 3 months after I'd moved out, I found myself staring at a blank sheet of paper. Not a screen, not a phone, not something that could be easily erased. Just paper. Something permanent. I don't know what made me reach for a pen. Maybe it was the silence. Or the memory of how things used to be before everything fell apart. But something in me needed to speak, even if no one writing ever read it. So I began writing a letter to both of them, to Jason, to Emily. It started as a whisper, then the words poured out. You both changed me. You broke something in me I didn't know could break. It wasn't just the cheating. It was the ease with which you both lied to me. Looked me in the eye, pretended nothing was wrong while tearing my world apart behind my back. I wrote slowly, deliberately. My handwriting looked foreign to me, shaky, angry, tired. Jason, you promised forever. You told me I was your home. But instead of facing problems, you ran into someone who was supposed to protect me, not hurt me. Emily, you were my best friend before you were my sister. I trusted you in ways I didn't trust anyone. You knew my fears, my insecurities. You used them against me. How could you? I paused several times, staring out the window, the city lights blurring as my eyes filled with tears. What you both did doesn't just feel like betrayal. It feels like erasure. You erased my history, my foundation, my belief in loyalty. You made me question everything I've ever known about love and family. But here's what you didn't erase me. I'm still here, bruised, yes, but alive. Learning, stronger than I thought I'd be. I finished the letter with, I hope someday, when your world is quiet, you feel the echo of what you lost. Not just me, but the version of yourselves that still had integrity. I signed my name at the bottom and folded the letter once. I didn't send it. I placed it in a drawer, deep in the back of my nightstand, behind old receipts and tangled cords. A letter like that wasn't meant to be sent. It was meant to be released. The act of writing it, saying what needed to be said without fear or interruption, was a kind of therapy I didn't know I needed. It wasn't about them hearing it. It was about me hearing myself. Afterward, I felt lighter, not healed, but hollowed out in a way that made room for something new. That night, I slept with the window cracked open. The breeze was cool and the air smelled like rain. Somewhere, I knew they were both living their new lives. I didn't care. I wasn't waiting for justice anymore, or an apology. I had written my truth, and that was enough. Healing didn't come all at once. It came in fragments, in tiny, almost imperceptible shifts, like the way my chest stopped tightening every time I heard their names. Or the way I could walk past familiar places, restaurants we used to love, shops we used to visit, without collapsing into memories. I started therapy regularly. My therapist, a woman named Claire, had a way of asking questions that unlocked parts of me I didn't know were still hiding. She never pushed too hard, just enough to help me find the pieces I needed to pick up. "What do you want now?" she asked one afternoon, weeks into our sessions. I didn't have an answer at first. I sat in silence, thinking. Then I said peace, not just quiet, real peace. So I started working toward it. I got rid of old furniture that reminded me of my past life, bought new sheets, changed the color of my walls. I even got a plant, a little pothos that hung from the ceiling and reminded me to care for something again, even if it was just a green sprout of life in an otherwise quiet home. I joined a yoga class. Not because I loved yoga, but because I needed movement, some way to reconnect with my body. At first, I felt ridiculous. Everyone else seemed calm, graceful. I wobbled in every pose. But I kept going. Something about the stillness at the end, lying flat on the mat in Savasana, gave me a sense of calm I hadn't felt in months. Friends started inviting me out again. At first, I declined every time. Then, one Friday night, I said yes. It was just dinner, nothing special. But when I laughed at a joke, really laughed, it startled me. The sound of my own joy had become unfamiliar. I didn't tell many people what happened. When they asked about the divorce, I offered vague responses. Things just didn't work out. We grew apart. But when I did choose to tell someone the full story, I was met with stunned silence, followed by something even more healing: belief. "You didn't deserve that," one friend said after hearing everything. "I'm so sorry you went through it alone." That was the thing. I had gone through it alone, but I didn't have to stay alone. So, slowly, I reached out more, rebuilt old connections I had let fade. I surrounded myself with people who saw me, truly saw me, not through the lens of who I used to be, but who I was becoming. There were still bad days. Mornings I woke up with that familiar ache, nights when I rolled over expecting a warm body beside me. But the pain no longer controlled me. It didn't define me. It was just a shadow, a reminder of where I'd been. 6 months after I moved out, I hosted a dinner at my place. Just 4 friends, candles, and pasta I cooked myself. It wasn't fancy, but it was mine. And as we laughed over wine and dessert, I felt something I hadn't in a long time: hope. Not for a new relationship, not yet. Just hope for a life that could be good again, whole again. Built on honesty, boundaries, and quiet strength. My past still lived within me, but it no longer led the way. I was rebuilding, not to erase the pain, but to rise above it. And brick by brick, day by day, I was learning how to live again. A year passed. It came quietly, no fanfare, no dramatic marker. Just a simple morning where I woke up, made my coffee, and realized something had changed. The air felt lighter. My chest no longer carried that weight. The pain, once sharp and constant, had dulled into something bearable, manageable. I looked in the mirror that morning and saw someone new, someone not untouched by grief but shaped by it, someone who had survived being broken and had slowly, painstakingly glued herself back together. The divorce was finalized 6 months earlier. The paperwork arrived in the mail in a plain white envelope. I opened it alone, sitting on my couch, the plant in the window thriving now, growing faster than I expected. It felt symbolic, a life that continued despite everything. Jason never reached out again after picking up his things. I hadn't seen him, hadn't heard his voice. Sometimes I imagined what I would say if we ran into each other at the grocery store or a coffee shop. But those imaginary conversations never lasted long, because the truth was I didn't need anything from him anymore. Emily, too, remained silent. I learned through my cousin that she had moved to a new city, started a new job. I didn't ask for details, I didn't want them. Whatever life she was building, it was hers alone. We had once been inseparable. Now we were strangers connected only by a shared bloodline and a history too painful to revisit. My parents, that was harder. After the disastrous family meeting, I kept my distance. My mother reached out on holidays with generic messages. My father sent a short text on my birthday, "Hope you're well." I didn't respond. It wasn't spite, it was protection. I had learned, through immeasurable pain, that boundaries are not walls, they are doors, and I was choosing when and if to open them. In therapy, I once asked, "How do you forgive someone who isn't sorry?" Claire told me, "You don't forgive them for them. You forgive so you can move forward." I wasn't there yet. Not completely, but I was walking in that direction. Some nights I still dreamt of the past. Of laughter in the kitchen, hands intertwined in the dark, my sister's head on my shoulder during old movies. Those dreams didn't shatter me anymore. They just reminded me that once I loved deeply, and that I was still capable of love, even if it had been betrayed. I had learned to fill my time with things that nourished me: reading, cooking, learning to play the piano again, slowly, note by note. I even traveled by myself for the first time, just a weekend getaway to a quiet cabin by a lake. It was peaceful, solitary, beautiful. That weekend, I stood on the dock at sunrise, wrapped in a sweater, watching the mist lift off the water. I whispered to the universe, "Thank you for the strength. Thank you for showing me I could survive." And I meant it. Peace came, but it came at a cost: the loss of a marriage, the death of a sisterhood, the severing of familial trust. But in that space, I found something else: clarity, resilience, and a version of myself I never would have met if life had stayed easy. I was no longer the woman who doubted her worth. I was no longer the wife trying to be enough for someone who didn't see her. I was me, and that was enough. The above stories show the consequences and limits of family relationships between parents and children, husbands and wives, siblings and siblings. When trust is broken not by strangers but by those who share your blood or your bed, the damage runs deep and quiet. It lingers, it changes you. But they also show that healing is possible. That survival is not just about enduring pain but choosing peace. Reclaiming your voice. Rebuilding your life from the ashes of betrayal. Have you ever experienced a betrayal within your own family? How did you cope with it? Let us know in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe for more real life stories like this one.